Hello everyone, my name is Ben and I'm a kinesiologist. I work with human movement and exercise and generally in a rehab clinic. Mostly right now I've been doing virtual care like this to talk about people who are at home on their long-term disability or on an injury claim for work and are in a lot of pain. Now one of the things we're also seeing though is that a lot of people who aren't on an injury claim are also in a lot of pain or finding that they're a little more stiff. Today's conversation is going to be about what happens when you move from an ergonomically nice position at work to whatever you call it at home. We generally see that at work you have at least a nice office chair and it's sitting like this, and maybe you're still doing some of this. You're probably doing still a little bit of this. But suddenly we bring that at home and we've moved over to a laptop and we're on a dining room table or we're on a couch or we're sitting at a desk that you just have this old antique desk that you picked up one time in the Valley Village, and you don't get your knees in, you sit like this. And suddenly these feelings that you maybe never had, or you definitely have had before, are going to be a lot worse. I'm talking about that low back pain, maybe that stiffness in the neck, something where you just feel your shoulders are kind of catching. And one of the actually bigger ones that you don't expect as much, but a headache. The headache can be from many things, so don't let me just tell you that it's going to be because of your neck or because of your posture. But your neck and your posture can definitely attribute to it. So I'm going to talk for the next little while about what we're talking about in our posture around our neck, our mid-back, our low back, and how to fix that after sitting for a while. Other shows that I can do in the future, depending on what your feedback is going to be, is do you want to have some sort of exercise routine? Because we can do that too. Do you want to be looking at something that regards on how we can actually get some really good stretching, that motion is lotion, flexibility versus mobility? Because that's a fantastic one. Or do you need an ergonomic assessment of what an actual workspace at home should look like? I've done more than my fair share of those. I've done them where I recommend chairs. I've either done ones where it says, how do we just change our current setup? How do we make that a laptop is not the worst possible thing to work off of? It usually is. These are all different options, but for today, a bit of education about how you can keep yourself from becoming the caveman that in the end works on the computer every day. One of the first things we have to talk about here is that I'm not expecting perfection. One of my mentors always talked about the idea, which is that his posture's terrible. He's a tall guy, and so tall guys always kind of sit like this. He doesn't mind that. It's okay to be like this. It's just the issue is when you can't get back into this. This is where our issues start to arise. So, we're looking at the human body, and we're looking at sitting. Generally, the positions we have to start thinking of are across the spine. And the spine is divided into multiple parts, but we're going to focus on 3 of them today. The cervical spine, the thoracic spine, and finally the lumbar spine. Now, we're pointing out these parts here. Every part has its own special ability. The lumbar spine is very good for stability. It's meant to help take force from the upper part of the body to the lower part of the body, and the lower part of the body back up to the upper part of the body. The thoracic spine holds all the ribs and actually has a lot more mobility than most people think. It helps to have it that we can be able to move through our shoulders and basically hold some force but transmit things from our upper extremity down to the lumbar spine nice and well in a good vector. Finally, the thing we're looking at is the cervical spine. This is our neck. The idea of movement across here and through here. Lots of range, but at the same time, lots of smaller muscles that get some tension, and a lot of the muscles that actually we do a lot more work with than we should. I apologize, I do have a dog and somewhere around here a cat that may be making noises at some points. Today I can tell you probably have quite a bit of movement through the cervical spine, or I'll just call it the neck from here on out, but we're finding that that's where a lot of tension sitting. We're talking about the neck. We start off by having something about positioning. Generally, we have a nice good posture, our head's in a good position. The neck is directly above the thoracic spine, and the head has all the weight coming downward onto it. Now the issue we start to see is more of this positioning here. This positioning here is going to be doing 2 things. Number 1, it's going to be increasing the force on the lever that is our cervical spine because we're coming off of an angle here instead of letting gravity come straight down. The secondary thing is we're talking about a very large muscle here called levator scapula. The levator scapula you may recognize from stiffness in yourself, coming from right here at the base of the skull, sitting on the cervical spine here, and then it comes off the cervical spine down across the shoulder blade right here. So if you've felt tension here, 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 and even here, generally we can start looking at the cervical spine we can start talking about levator scapulae. So when we're talking about levator scapulae and this neck, we have to talk about two positions. Number one is an exercise called the neck retraction. Like so. I use two fingers at first because a big part of these muscles is that not that they are even overworked or that they are stiff and broken. It's more so that we don't recognize how to use them. We do things with them, but we're not really sure what we're doing. So this here is called the neck retraction. It's a really good look. I say that if you do this at your partner or you're doing it in public, you will generally get better, faster. A couple key movements about this one here is it is not a downward chin tuck. We're not going like this. And we're also not looking straight up. It is a direct backward feeling like your head is literally on a drawer and it's sliding backwards. Now, a couple key things to talk about this one here. It is a repetitive exercise. You don't have to sit back here and hold it all day. It's something you're moving in a nice slow motion. The other thing about the movement is it's not something to be done jerkily. There will be a point when your neck feels like it's had attention and it's had enough. You don't need to go past that. This is not find the tension and force your way back through it. It's fine when your muscles start to feel that pressure, that inner building in the back of the neck, and then release back down. I generally aim for about 10 of these at a time. If you were driving around, I'd even say pushing your head into the headrest is a great option for this. Simple enough position that, again, we're getting that better posture, we're getting that positioning in, and then we're relaxing back into it. So that's stretch number one that really works around for the neck. And after, again, 30 minutes on a computer, great one to help get that position back in from laptop work or from desktop work. The second area I want to talk about is actually stretching that exact muscle I've been mentioning earlier. And the way we work on that muscle there is that we're going to take our hand and we're going to, if we're in a chair, sit on it or grab the bottom of the chair. What we want to look at right there is we're going to be grabbing the chair, or in my case, sitting on the hands, and we're going to very gently keep that shoulder down and back. Turn the head and drop down. In this case here, we should be feeling across the contralateral side from here to here. This stretch should be held for 15 to 30 seconds. It is not one, again, to bob into, and it's not one where we're just going and gritting our teeth and holding it in pain. It should be tense, but not painful. If you're like myself, this stretch actually isn't enough anymore because I like to do my stretches very often. I grab the head gently in the back and pull down. For most, this will be excessive. We do not need to pull down. We feel the tension already. And in this case, this is enough. Now, I want to get one clear thing across. When we're stretching something, every muscle has a beginning and an end, an origin and an insertion. And whenever you're stretching, you have to consider both those points. The reason why I have my hand down underneath the chair or sitting on it is because that muscle I talked about attaches to the shoulder blade. If we have our arm up here as an example, and I go like this and down, I'll feel significantly less stretch. Because as I move the origin of the muscle, the insertion is just coming up with it. So, always make sure to be basing every stretch with a hold on 2 points. Now, I did this position here, and you're probably recognizing that. The levator scapula, I mentioned that you may actually be using it without noticing it as much. This is one of those really calm muscles. Its main job is to elevate the scapula, levator scapula. And the idea behind that is it does this. It also has a lot of tension related to the nerves in the neck that come up into the head. And sitting up in this position here, it's going to be one of those ones we start to see an issue with. So not only will that help with that headache, but also to help with you recognizing when I'm in this position, when I'm bringing that chin nice and forward, back, and that shoulders up to my head and losing that neck. Whew, even doing that there was a little painful for me. So, starting off with those two positions for the neck, excellent ones to start off our warm-up. The secondary part we're looking at is that thoracic spine. Now the thoracic spine, as you can see from me continually moving like this, it's built for some rotation. The way the vertebrae are structured, they have a very nice idea where they move back and forth across the set joints like so. That movement there allows us to get some movement through here, but will be significantly limited as soon as we get this increased kyphotic curve, increased movement like this. Suddenly this movement becomes much more difficult. And we start to move either through the neck or even more likely through the lower back. So the quick ones we want to look at for here is going to be something called a Brugger exercise. Now, Brugger exercise is all about fighting that caveman response of thumbs forward to thumbs back. Your focus in here should be, I mentioned the cat is here, should be thumbs coming outward and downward and pulling back. Very simple movement, but there's a couple key things I really want you to recognize while you're doing this movement here. Number one, talking about the neck again. The most common mistake I see is this. My thumbs are still going outward, but they're not going down, and my neck is coming up. I'm getting tension across here. Not the best option. Again, focus on the downward positioning. Learn about your shoulder blades. Feel the muscles that are engaging underneath. Come here, Griff. Ready? And 3, 2, 1, run! Lack of success. We're talking about this movement here. As you can see, my shoulder blades are pinching back and down. You'll be feeling tension across the inside of the shoulder blade, here and here. You could also feeling it here. If most of the tension is coming from the neck in this position, we're missing the points. The focus again should be here. Not into pain, but tension is definitely understandable, as well as a feeling of filling of the muscles between the shoulder blades. So, we have it so far that I've talked about some very basic movements for the neck and for the mid-back. We're going to do one more mid-back, we're going to talk about the lower back, and then I'm going to show you my favorite stretch to be done, not seated, but somewhere on a mat. Or, if you don't have a mat, on a bed. For the thoracic, the last thing we want to talk about here is the simple movement of rotation. We've had this idea of extension to a better postural position. Rotation takes the moment being, we're going to be grabbing the chair here, moving back through here. You probably recognize this is one as you do when you're feeling sore. That crack, crack. We don't need the crack right now. And that has its benefits, but should be done properly and with education. For now, our focus should be as taking our opposite hand, in this case my left, grabbing the chair, and gently turning. The feeling and focus should be up here, from this point of the body to this point of the body. If you're feeling strain in the lower portion, I want you to take a break from this movement. Movement through there, coming back, grabbing, holding, moving through here. Again, a focus on a good posture beforehand. If we're doing it like this, significantly less movement. And if we're going like this and hyperextending at the lower back, we're not doing the greatest either. So picture straight, picture that moment being where you're going and meeting your old teachers and trying to look like you're a big success. That's what we want to see. Final conversational part about this spine is that lumbar spine. Now, I'm not asking for a ton for this one right now. We'll do this in future videos. The key point of today is to learn on how we're moving through the lumbar spine. The common issue we start to see is this excessive lordosis, this idea where the spine is pushing outwards this way and creating long forms of pressure there. You've probably heard of things like bulging discs, degenerative disc disease, muscle strain in the lower back. All these things are possible, but generally what we're just looking at, and especially in this case, is just soreness there. I'm hoping that these are all the things you have to see from that. This idea of this positioning here, and you face like this. The exercises above helped with that. Movement at the neck pushed us back. Movement at the mid-back really helped with that positioning. But the final one I want you to start thinking about here is actually below the lower back. It's the pelvis, the hips. Right here, there's two different bones. There's something called your ASIS, and they are part of your hip bone. The idea behind this should be is, where are they positioned? Are they tilted forward? Are they tilted back? A simple enough exercise in this case is really just moving those hips back and forward in something called a pelvic tilt. Feel what happens. Feel what you're doing. I can promise you this, if you're moving, and if you're learning about your body, and letting your brain learn what your body's doing, you're going to have significantly more success in anything you do, and pain will be reduced. The worst thing that your body can feel is ignorance. If it doesn't know what's going on in an area, it's going to hurt a lot more. If it at least knows what's moving and how that feels and how to move through it, pain will reduce, stiffness will reduce, and the rest of the body will feel better. So learn. Let your body feel things and focus on what those movements are, how you're doing them, and how your brain can make you do them. It's essential, especially when we've moved into a position where we can't just rely on our equipment to do it for us. Now, final thing I want to bring up. My favorite stretch, my big go-to, the one that I do literally every day, and that when I'm feeling really sore, I will immediately move to. It's a common yoga position you'll be seeing as the open book, or a thoracic rotation. Now, James, tell me if you can see me perfectly here, because I'll be doing it in a couple different scenes here. It's a mid-back movement. And we're going to slide. It's a mid-back movement where our focus is to try and take that shoulder blade that's on the top right here and touch the ground. Now, I'm moving quite easily down. You'll see I move slightly through the hips. My shoulder comes down and then my arm extends. I come to here, I trace along the body again and bring it back up. I'm doing an ideal version. For someone who's new to the position, I'd recommend use of a pillow underneath your head. I'm using a foam roller because I find it's a little bit easier for myself. Keeping the head in a nice straight line with the body, we're going to have it that as you're going, you're letting your head rotate. You're trying to bring this shoulder down to the ground. The tension should be felt in the mid-back. A possibility where you could feel it though is right here in the chest. If you're feeling it here, what I want you to do is stop trying to bring the hand out like this. Focus on keeping that close to the body and bring that chest nice and back. Commonly what we'll see is this. You're not making it all the way down, and that's okay. I'm not expecting you to. But what I do want to see is instead of the hand coming out here and stopping us, we keep our hand here and we try to make this feeling here be where we're getting most of the movement out of. So again, I feel tightness, I stop, I come back. I should be moving a little bit deeper into them with every repetition. Start with 5 repetitions on each side. See if you get to 10. If your hips move a little bit like this, that's okay to start off with. You don't have to fight yourself. Let your body move how it normally moves and try to understand what that looks like. Right off my foam roller, I generally don't use any kind of head support, and I move just a straight up line like this. The only issue is that if you do have a tight neck, like we were talking about earlier, you'll actually find your neck starts to get more tense without a pillow there. This movement here can be held or continuously move through, looking at, again, that 5 repetitions. If by number 5, this shoulder is not touching the ground, then this is definitely a stretch for you. This should be something that's repeated daily, moving through it gently, simply, and without pain. So again, a quick review of the small stretches that we talked about earlier. When we're looking at the neck, we talked about the neck retraction. We're talking about the levator scapular stretch. Holding for 15 to 30 seconds. We're talking about the Brugger movements, or Brugger exercise. Focusing on not coming up through the shoulders, but instead down and out. Focusing on those thumbs pushing down and through, pinching at the shoulder blades. The thoracic rotation. Moving through the mid-back, between the ribs and on the lumbar spine. The pelvic tilts. Trying to get accustomed to how we move through our lower back and how we control that. And finally, my favorite, the open book. Thanks for listening, and hope you find it informative. My next session will probably be on ergonomics, and then after that we'll start looking more into fitness-based areas, because the longer we get, the more we need to find some ways to move. If you have any questions, feel free to put them on the chat and I'll make sure to respond. And at the same time, it was a pleasure seeing you today, and hope you're having a lovely Sunday. And if it's not Sunday, then a lovely week. Good luck, stay safe out there.